The world loves to make you feel like you're lacking, as if you were born with some fatal flaw that everyone else can see except you. But here's the irony. The flaw never existed. The only flaw was believing that there was ever something to fix. They kept you scrambling, clawing, tearing yourself apart in a desperate attempt to be, what? Perfect? Acceptable? Something worthy of their gaze, their validation. A sick joke, really, because you were always good enough. Always. And all the suffering was for nothing. Imagine it. All those sleepless nights, the self-doubt that gnawed at your bones, the constant feeling of not being enough. What was it for? Just to fit into a mold that was never meant for you. To earn the approval of those who never deserved a piece of your soul. You let the world convince you that your value was measured by their metrics, that your worth was determined by how well you conformed to their shallow standards. And every time you fell short, every time you broke under the weight of those expectations, the lie dug its claws deeper into your mind. But the truth, the cruel, delicious twist is, you were more than enough from the start. And they feared that. So they made you doubt. They made you question. Because what's more terrifying than someone who knows their own worth? The world is a master at weaving illusions, distorting mirrors that reflect only weakness, only flaws. It's easier to control someone who's been hollowed out, who's too busy fixing imaginary cracks to realize they're not broken. They try to strip you down, to drain the color from your soul, to shape you into a shadow of yourself. And you let them. You fed the lie, starved your spirit, cut pieces off until you almost disappeared completely. But here's where it all falls apart, because the moment you realize you were always enough, that the standards were false, the expectations were chains, it all comes crumbling down. And then the power shifts. You were never lacking. You were never less. You were a force that was never meant to fit in the box they built for you. Good enough? No. You were always more than enough. You just needed to see it. You needed to strip away the layers of doubt, the poison of their words, the infection of their judgment. What they never told you is that you didn't have to change to be worthy. They wanted you blind, desperate, chasing an approval that would never come. But the moment you stop chasing, the moment you stop contorting yourself to fit into their twisted perceptions, that's when you become dangerous. Think of all the time you wasted, thinking that you needed to become more, thinking you needed to prove something. But what were you really proving? To whom? The real question should have always been, why did you think you needed to prove yourself at all? The people who told you that you weren't good enough, the voices that made you shrink, made you small, they were always beneath you. They were always scared. Scared of what you would become if you ever realized that you were complete, that you didn't need their validation to be whole. It was all a game, and for the longest time, you played by their rules. But no more. That's where the game ends, where the board flips and the illusion shatters. Because being good enough was never about becoming more. It was about removing the blindfold, about silencing the voices that told you to keep cutting yourself down. Being good enough was about reclaiming what was always yours, your power, your self-respect, your sovereignty. You were good enough the moment you took your first breath. Everything else was just smoke and mirrors, a cheap trick designed to keep you from stepping into your own greatness. And now you're free. free to be whole, to take up space, to let your presence be felt without shrinking. No more seeking, no more apologizing for what you are. The only thing that ever needed to change was your perception of yourself. So step forward, unburdened, unapologetic. You were always good enough. But now, with the chains shattered and the illusions burned away, now you're something far beyond good enough. Now you're someone the world has to reckon with. Let them watch as you rise, no longer bending, no longer breaking. Let them see what happens when the one they tried to diminish finally stands tall. Good enough? You were always more than they could ever comprehend. And now that you know it, now that you've seen through the lies, nothing can stop you. Because being good enough was never the goal. The goal was to break free, to transcend, to become something beyond measure. And now, you are.